Good morning, a good tavach. Hope you had a wonderful Shabbos. Today we're recording this a little bit earlier than usual. I have to go down to Manhattan for a bris, and I need to go to shiur. So I need to be a little bit more responsible. And okay, here we go. Today's shiur is sponsored by Nishma Sarah Nachman Simcha Koinu Shul Mordechai Ben Shep Sabracha Sabah Shmuel Lev and Binah Moshe Ben Yosef Ben Yosef ourselves will have an aliyah. And before Shtama for yourself, Rachel Zoda Rachel Aliana Basel Bracha. I'm a Rishon Marisha Chayabas to Bela for Shtama Pesach Shachal Yisrael. And for special shout out to our sponsor, Seder Russian Imperial Advisory Group, helping companies with their financial requirements and CFO stuff for over 30 years. If you need help with your business for the financials, please go to them at imperialgrp.com. Okay. We'll see. Nashma's wrapping up in a week, so they're going to be wrapping up the sponsorship too. Perek Hey, Maseches Gittin, Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph. So we were talking the other day about the different gezeros that the Chachamim have put on that were enacted for the benefit of society. And we're going to continue with that over here. Hani Zarkin Shamil Lahem Be'idius. In order to compensate people who suffered damages from their property, like it's animal or whatever damages another person. It was animal damages another person or his property. He must pay the value. This is we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk a lot about this when we get into Nezikin next week. But this perek is called Hanizokin, so it's related to that. So we assess for them the amount of the loss, and they collect it from the damage is high quality land. And the lender collects his debt from the borrower's medium quality land. And a woman's ksuba is collected from her husband's poor quality land. So we're gonna um, talk more about this when we get into the Zika. Meir says, ksubas isha b'beinlis. The woman's ksuba payment is also collected from her husband's medium quality land. According to Meir, a woman owed her ksuba has the same law as any lender owed money, and she's therefore paid with medium quality land. Okay. Mishnah Beis. The people who are owed money may not collect payments from sold properties if there are free unsold properties in the payer's possession. A transaction that went through, if it went through, you cannot undo the transaction if there's other property to take from. Ziborius. This law applies even when the unsold properties in the payer's possession are poor quality. The person who's owed money can take the debtor's land even after the debtor has sold it to another person. However, however, he can collect land. He can collect sold land only properties, and you owe the guy money, and um, you sold those properties before you paid back the money. Then, if you have no properties left to sell or to give him, then he can go and undo the sale of the properties that you sold. But if let's say you have, let's say, 10 properties, for example, and you sold five of them, you have five of them left. You can't take from the land that was already sold because you have five. Yes, five other properties, even if the land is not the same quality. The people who are owed money may collect only land of poor quality from the inherited property of the orphans. If the claimant would have been allowed to take land of high quality, of high or medium quality from the debtor himself, he may only take land of poor quality from the debtor's orphans. From the Asomim. Mishnah Gimel, Ein Motzin Lechias Peiros L'Sheva Karkaros L'Mazan Ha'isha V'Abanos. We may not collect payments for eating of produce or for the improvement of land or for the food of a man's wife and daughters. You cannot get that. You cannot get that. You cannot take the money for that from sold properties. Rather, only from the available properties. Um, why? The Chachamim made these enactments for the benefit of society. All these payments had no set amount. Therefore, if they were able to collect it from the property that they sold to others, people would not be willing to buy land for fear of losing it as payment for early obligation. So you can't mix up the whole world from this. If someone finds lost property and returns it to the owner, and the owner claims that the finder did not return everything that was lost but kept part for himself, Lo Yishava, the finder does not have to swear to the owner that he returned all of it. Because for the benefit of society, because otherwise, why would anybody want to return anything if they have to make sure that they returned everything? No one's going to do that. Mishnah Dalet, Yishamim Shesam Kuwait Sabal Abayis. If orphans relied on the householder to be the administrator who manages their affairs, or if their father, before his death, appointed an administrator for them, the administrator is obligated to meister the produce, to separate trumas and meisters, so that they do not eat produce that is usher. You can't eat table. Apotrifus sheminuhu avi yisavim yishava. An administrator who was appointed by the orphan's father before he was passed away to manage their affairs must swear to the orphans when they reach adulthood that he did not keep any of their property for himself. This he has to do. So even though the orphans have no definite claim against the administrator, the Chachamim imposed this oath on him so people will not suspect him taking advantage of the Yisomim, and also to calm any concerns that the orphans might have about his trustworthiness. I make sure that he's on the up and up. Minahu based in but if the court appointed him as administrator, does not have to swear because he was obviously because the person might refuse to become an administrator of the court if they have to swear every time they become a putrifus. So Abishal says the verse of these rulings is true. That if an administrator appointed by the court must swear, but an administrator appointed by the father does not need to swear. His reasons are that since the person benefits from being appointed by the court, as he earns reputation as a trustworthy person, he will not refrain from accepting the position because of the oath. The court is paying him too, and it's a respectable thing, taking care of business. But an administrator appointed by the father gets nothing. So he's doing it as a chesed. So he might refrain from taking the position if he has to swear. Like, I'm not being paid for this. It's all volunteer. Like, why am I trying to hurt these kids? It becomes a different of a situation. Hametame. If someone makes another person's food tame, or if he mixes truma into another person's ordinary produce, or if he makes another person's wine usher by mixing it with wine that was poured before an idol, the shogig pater, the law is that if he damaged the item unknowingly, he is pater from payment. The maize is chayiv, but if he damaged it knowingly, he is chayiv to pay. The Torah requires one to pay only for the damage that can be seen and not for damage of this type, which cannot be seen. However, if he caused even this type of damage knowingly, the Chachamim punished him by requiring him to pay. Regarding Kohanim who disqualified someone's offering as pigul, if they did so knowingly, they intended to disqualify the korban, they are obligated to pay the owner of the korban. So too, although the damage was not physical, the Kohanim enacted for the benefit of society that the Kohen must pay, so other Kohanim will not do the same. Mishnah Hey, Hey, Rabbi Yochanan ben Gugoda, Rabbi Yochanan ben Gugoda testified about the following four laws. Number one, Shehishia Aviyah. He testified concerning a deaf mute girl whose father married her off. Shehi Yatsa get, and she can be divorced by by being given a get. Although a deaf mute is not considered mentally competent, her acceptance of the get is kosher. Since a woman can be divorced without her consent, mental competence is not required. And he testified concerning an orphaned minor, the daughter of Yisrael, meaning a non-Kohen, who after losing her father was married up by her mother or brothers to a Kohen. So chalas b'tshuma, she may eat truma because she is the wife of a Kohen. And that if she dies, her husband inherits her property. Well, hamarish hagazel shibanu bebira. And he testified concerning a stolen beam that the thief built into a large building. She told Damav, right, that the original owner takes only its value as compensation, and he cannot require the thief to return the beam to return the beam itself. You built the beam into the building, so you get to be paid back for the value of the beam. You can't rip out the whole building because of the beam. If they enacted this law for the benefit of thieves who wish to do tshuva and make up what they had done wrong, but it's extremely difficult to return stolen property itself. Number four, the rabbin. He testified concerning a stolen chatas offering, a stolen korban, whose stolen status is unknown to the public. He mechaperes that it atones, um, uh, is treated as though it's a kosher korban, and the thief need not bring another animal in its place. This was made for the benefit of the Mizbeach. So even though the korban is possible because it was stolen, the Chachamim were concerned that the thief would have to bring another in its place. The Kohanim would realize they had said that they were makriv and eaten a puzzle korban, and this would upset them so great that they would refrain from bringing other korbanos out of fear that they too are stolen. So they parted the thief from replacing the korban for the benefit of the Mizbeach to prevent the Mizbeach from being neglected, empty of korbanos. Mishnah Vav. Lo hayasi. How do you say this word? Sikrikon. Yehuda. The law of the Sikrikon does not apply in Eretz Yehuda, which is the southern part of Eretz Yisrael. When Jews were being killed as a result of the war. What's Sikrikon? Sikrikon is a murderous non-Jew who steals land from a Jew by threatening to kill him. The halachas of a Sikrikon relate to a Jew who bought land from a Sikrikon, who had stolen it from another Jew. So we're going to explain it more after we define what the circumstance. So, if someone bought land from a Sikrikon during the war, he was not subject to the law of the Sikrikon, as we're going to see soon. Rather, he was allowed to keep the land without any restrictions, because the occupying Roman government allowed and even encouraged the murder of Jews during the war, and a Jewish owner who would wholeheartedly give up his land to a Sikrikon who seized it from him. The Sikrikon does legally own the land, and sale to another Jew was valid. Even though the Sikrikon did not pay for the land and forced the Jew to give it to him, the Jew was so afraid for his life that he gave it to him wholeheartedly. Since the transaction was carried out with full intent, it was valid, and the land thus became the legally owned property of the Sikrikon. This applied only in Eretz Yehuda because the Romans targeted the land of the Chelik of Yehuda in particular with their brutal decrees, as they had a tradition that the Yehuda killed their father Esav. Even though it was really Chushim and Dan that did it. But they believed that was Yehuda that did it. So to those after. That's why they're always after Eretz Yehuda. However, after the period in which the Jews were killed as a result of the war, I mean, after the war, when the Romans' hostility subsided and they forbade the murder of Jews, and the law of the Sikrikon applied even in the land of Yehuda, since the Jews were no longer subjected to the earlier murderous decrees. A landowner would not be as frightened and would not surrender ownership of his land to a Sikrikon who seizes it. The Sikrikon therefore did not own land, and his later sale was not kosher. Someone who bought the stolen land from the Sikrikon was therefore subject to the laws of the Sikrikon. So, Ketzad, how so? What is the law of the Sikrikon? If a Jew bought land from a Sikrikon, which the Sikrikon has stolen from another Jew, and then in order to make his possession of the land legal, the buyer went and also bought it from the original owner. His purchase is void, and he must return the land to its owner, because the owner never really meant to sell it to him. However, if he bought the stolen land from the owner first, and then he went and bought it from the Sikrikon, his purchase is valid, and he did not return it to the original owner, because in such a case, the owner did mean to sell it to him. If someone bought land from the husband who had designated it as payment for his wife's ksuba, and then in order to make his possession of the land legal, he went and also bought the rights to the land from the wife, his purchase is void. He may not keep the land because the wife did not really mean to sell him the rights to him. However, if he bought the rights to the land from the wife first, and then he went and bought the land from the husband, his purchase is kosher, and he may keep the land because in such a case the wife did mean to sell it. This law, namely the one who bought stolen land from a Sikrikon and then bought it from the owner must return it to the owner, is the original teaching that the Chachamim applied. Based in Shalach Amru, but the court that came after them changed the ruling and said, Halokeach Sikrikon, Nosin, Ba'alim, Revia. Someone who buys stolen land from a Sikrikon and then buys it from the owner, they give back only 1/4 to the owner. Keep the rest for himself. The court made this change in order to encourage people to buy land from Sikrikon and restore Eretz Yisrael to Jewish ownership. When does this ruling apply? Namely, that one may buy stolen land from a Sikrikon, in which case the real owner receives only 1/4. When the owner does not have enough money to buy the land from the Sikrikon, but when the owner does have enough money to buy the land back, he comes before any other person. He has the right to buy the land from the Sikrikon before everyone else, and no one else is allowed to buy it. He has first rights. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi assembled the court to review the laws of the Sikrikon. And they voted that if the stolen land had remained with the Sikrikon for 12 months or more, in which the original owner failed to buy it back, whoever is first to buy it from the Sikrikon acquires it permanently. After 12 months have passed, the owner loses his right to buy the field from the Sikrikon before anyone else, even if he has enough money to buy it himself. I will understand that by other Reviyah, nevertheless, even in such a case, if someone else buys it, he must give 1/4 of the land back to the owner. Mishnah Zayin, Cheresh Romeis, the Nirmas, the deaf may signal with his hands or feet, with his hands or head, his intentions to make a transaction, and others may signal to him their intentions, and he may signal his acceptance and response. In either case, his signals are considered a true indication of his intent, and the transaction is legally binding. Then the Sefer says Koifetz for nikvats. He may even mouth his intentions, and others may mouth their intentions to him. He does not need to signal with his hands or head. The metaltalin, however, this leniency applies only to transactions involving movable property and not to buying and selling land. Hapeutos, this is the law of young children. Mechan mikach memkaran memkar. Their purchases are valid purchases and their sales are valid sales. Metaltalin, with regard to transactions involving movable property, but not to transactions involving land. They cannot effect legal transactions of land under Torah law, not for cherish or katan. But they can effect a sale for their personal needs. They buy food and they buy basic stuff. So then those sales and purchases are valid. They can go into a grocery store and do a transaction for the food for the day that they can do. They can't sell real estate. These things the Chachamim declare for the sake of peace. Kohen, Rishon, Achrav, Levi, Achrav Yisrael. Kohen reads for the Torah first, after Levi, and then Yisrael, and Darchei Shalom. This was enacted for the sake of peace. By creating a fixed order for the Torah, for the piece of Torah, they prevented quarreling of who would still read first. I wonder what they said about the auctions and the the selling the Aliyahs and Yantif. Ma'arvin b'bayis yashan, the residents were required to make an eruv only in the old house. If they had put their eruv bread in a certain person's house in the past, they must continue to put it there, not in another person's house. There's no Darchei Shalom. Again, for the sake of peace, if people see that the eruv bread was missing, was not replaced, they will expect others are carrying it in the courtyard without an eruv, and this will lead to arguments. So this is where it's been for so many years. Keep it there and weiter. Bor shehu karov va'amam ismali rishon. An irrigation canal flows alongside a series of fields with each with its own water pit to collect the water. The water pit that's closest to the source of the canal gets to be filled first by the farmer who owns that pit. And the water pits that are farther away from the source of the canal get to be filled in successive order. Darchei Shalom, this was enacted for the sake of peace. Although all the farmers are equally entitled to the water, the Chachamim made this rule to prevent fighting over who fills his pit first. Prey that were caught in traps set for beasts, birds, or fish that are subject to the laws of Gezel. Although under Torah law, the trapped animal does not belong to the trapper until he takes hold of it, the Chachamim prohibited anyone else from taking it while it's still in the trap. Because Darchei Shalom, this was done for the sake of peace, to prevent arguments between the trapper and someone who tried to take the trapped animal. However, if someone did take it, the courts did not force him to get it back because the trapper did not actually own it at the time. Rabbi Yossi says, Gazel Gomer is actual theft to take the trapped animal. According to Rabbi Yossi, the Chachamim decreed that an animal caught in a trap truly belonged to the trapper. Therefore, even after someone takes it, the courts can force them to give it back. A lost item that was found by a deaf, mute, and sane person or a minor who are considered mentally incompetent and thus cannot legally acquire anything is subject to the laws of theft. Although the item does not belong to such a finder, the Chachamim prohibited anyone else to take it from him. Darchei Shalom, this was enacted for the sake of peace, to prevent arguments between the finder and whoever tried to take the object from him. However, if someone did take the item, the courts did not force him to get it back because the finder did not actually own it at that time. Rabbi Yossi says the Gazel Gomer is actual theft to take the lost item. According to Rabbi Yossi, the Chachamim decreed that the item truly belongs to the deaf mute, and the courts can therefore force someone who took it from him to give it back. Ani haminaki b'rosh hazayis. The poor person is cutting down olives that were left for the poor from the top of an olive tree. Ma shetafta gazel. The olives that are on the ground beneath him are chayav to the laws of Gezel. uh, although the poor person who cut these olives off the tree did not yet pick them up, the Chachamim answered anyone else from taking them. They Darchei Shalom, it's for the sake of peace, to prevent arguments between the poor person and others who want to take the olives. However, if someone did take the olives, the court do not force them to give it back because it was not actual theft. Rabbi Yossi says, Gazal Gomer, it is actual theft to take the olives. According to Rabbi Yossi, the Chum decreed that the olives truly belong to the poor person, and the courts can therefore force someone who took them from him to give them back. We may not prevent poor non-Jews from taking the lekah shichar peah, which is the produce that's left in the field for the poor to take. Although these gifts are intended for the Jewish poor, the Chachamim decree that we must also let non-Jews take as well. Darchei Shalom, this is for the sake of peace, to promote peace between Jews and non-Jews. And the final Mishnah for Perek, hey, Mishnah Tes, Mash'eles isha v'chareta chashuda al shvius. A woman may lend her friend who's suspected of violating the laws of Shemitah, Narfa ukavara v'rechayim v'sanor, a sifter, a sieve, a mill, and oven. These are all items used for baking. Even though so she can lend all these items, even though her friend will probably use them to prepare Shemitah produce that's aser. But she cannot sort or grind her friend's Shemitah produce together with her, because she's thereby directly assisting in the preparation of aser, of produce that is aser. Eishes chaver meshelas, the Eishes amaret, the wife of a chaver, someone who carefully observes the laws of Tumah and Meiser, may lend to the wife of an Amaretz who does not observe those laws carefully. Nafa ukavara, a sifter and a sieve, uvareres v'tochenes and merakedes ima. She may even sort, grind, and sift her produce together with her. This is mutter, even though the Amaretz's wife might not meister the food before it is eaten, unless they are possibly preparing aser food. Once she, the Amaret's wife, adds water to the flour, you cannot help with it. You cannot help her knead it. The fish so one may not directly assist those who are in the act of committing a transgression. When the water is added and mixed into the flour, the resulting dough is chayav to the shiur of challah. The halacha is that before the challah is removed from the dough, one is ushered to make the dough tameh. In our case, since the Amaret's wife and her utensils are presumed to be tameh, she will commit the sin of making the dough tameh as she needs it. The chaver's wife is therefore ushered to help her knead the dough, because she will thereby directly assist in the transgression. Okay, the Chachamim said that all these acts are permitted only for the sake of peace, to promote peace between different groups of Jews. They may give words of encouragement to non-Jews who work in their own land, in Israel, on Shemitah. We may not encourage a Jew who's doing so. Shalom b'shloman, and we may greet non-Jews by saying Shalom, which is one of the names of Hashem, even on their pagan holidays. Darchei Shalom, these are permitted for the sake of peace, to promote peace between Jews and non-Jews. Thank you for joining us, and tomorrow we'll continue with Perek Vav, and we'll be wrapping up Gittin later in the week, and moving on to Kedushin, and the Siyum is next week on Tuesday, June 9th. If you want to come, please let me know, and I'll give you the information. Have a wonderful day. Kol Tov.